Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Gwen Magoon. Today, our discussion will focus on child sexual abuse. What it is, the challenges we face in protecting our children, the difference between indecent and sexual assault. And yes, it's a difficult conversation, but one that we need to have. Now, just to start, let's quickly look at ODPP statistics for June 2018. There were 28 offenses of rape, 1 of attempted rape, 2 of abduction with intent, 3 of defilement, and 3 of sexual assault. In one incident, a 43-year-old father was charged with the rape of his 14-year-old daughter who fell pregnant after the incident. In another alleged incident, a 29-year-old uncle was charged with raping his 12-year-old nephew. In May, a 27-year-old man was charged with the rape of his 2-year-old daughter. Today, we're having a conversation with Jennifer Poole, the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, and Monisha Singh, the Senior Counselor of MSP. Jennifer and Monisha, thank you so much for your time, ladies. Well, just to begin, Jennifer, could you give us some background on Medical Services Pacific? What specialized support does MSP provide?
Thank you, Gwen. So Medical Services Pacific was established in 2010 under an agreement with the Ministry of Health and Medical Services to provide reproductive health services. And under that umbrella, we've been able to set up services that work in partnership with the Fiji Police Force and provide a range of holistic care for survivors of sexual assault. So we provide counselling in terms of understanding the procedure for medical examination, as well as the medical examination, the medical forensics, the presumptive treatment for STI, preventing HIV and unplanned pregnancy due to rape. And then we do ongoing counselling and provide legal counselling and legal support throughout the process. So we know that cases can take anywhere between 1 year to 4 years to get to court, and the clients need ongoing support and counselling to continue to follow through that process. We also have mobile outreach teams that go out to communities. They're currently in the Yasawas or Coro this week. They're in the maritime area this year, as well as Viti Levu. We have also a clinic in Labasa, which is also providing this post-rape care service, as well as doing outreach to communities in the Northern Division.
Jennifer, could you just, explain to us, give us clarity on what constitutes rape, or what is defined as rape under the Crimes Decree 2009?
Well, under the Crimes Act, rape is carnal knowledge without consent. So consent's the most important thing. It's a coercive act without consent, and it can be, perpetrated by somebody of any age if they're in a position of power or responsibility, against another without their consent.
How common is sexual abuse among children of different ages?
Which in Fiji?
Yes, in the context of Fiji, yes.
I think it's unfortunately it is more common than we'd like to admit. We do see most of our cases are under 18. Children are a little bit more vulnerable and at risk in these situations, and they also they lack the skills to be able to know their rights, to know what to do and know how to respond in these types of situations. So we are seeing, I guess...
We do see a lot of reports surrounding child sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm. Are any particular children at increased risk?
Generally all children. Any child can be raped or sexually abused. There is not a particular age to it.
So perpetrators, if you look at our statistics, perpetrators can be and are usually 80% of the perpetrators are known to the victim or the survivor. They're in their family circle. They're stepbrothers, stepfathers, uncles, grandfathers, boyfriends, and they're known to the victim or to the survivor. So I think we were raised to think that it was a stranger that would perform this terrible and violent act, but unfortunately it's people that we know that are opportunistic and take advantage of children that are unsupervised or youth or teenagers that might be vulnerable.
Is the impact of sexual abuse different for adolescents?
Yes, it is.
It is. It's only because of the difference in development stages. A younger child may easily, forget about it, or because they're nurtured, they're still being socialized. So their responses to the violence are going to be much different from an adolescent who is at a stage where they're discovering, exploring. So they may act out. They may self-harm, act out in the sense that they self-harm. They may indulge in a little drastic measures like
the drug abuse,
drug abuse,
alcoholism, or when it affects teenagers, it can affect them at that key development moment where they're trying to value themselves, and it can really damage their self-worth. Some end up, if they're not counselled and supported, they can end up on drugs, they can end up in sex work because they've lost the value of their own body. So it's really, really important that, if you know someone that's been through a sexual assault, that they get some counselling, and they can ring the Child Helpline on 1325. Our counsellors are really experienced in helping people through this. So they can also ring the Domestic Violence Helpline, which is 1560.
Okay. Just on the Child Helpline, Jennifer, this was launched in 2015?
Yes, by the Ministry of Women.
Right. It's Fiji's first national helpline. You had 679 calls were received in 2015. What are the numbers to date?
Wow, we've received over 40,000 calls to date, and our counsellors are on 24/7. They're quite busy, but Monisha is our Child Helpline Manager, so I'll let her talk to you about the types of calls perhaps that are coming in.
Yes. So our calls are ranging from genuine calls to people testing our line to people even pranking our line. We also have children pranking our lines. And we've also got calls that are dropped. We try to answer, but then people hang up or calls drop. So basically, we've had about more than 40,000 calls till date, and above 6,000 genuine calls.
And the genuine calls they provide information, counselling and referral. So they're referring on a daily basis to police, to welfare, to other agencies for things like shelter. We can refer internally for legal advice on DVROs or child maintenance. We can refer internally for information around health issues. Yes. So we do a lot of information giving as well as counselling on the helpline.
Mm-hmm. Just something else, while you're outlining, the process of the helpline. When you receive a call from a child, say in a remote area, and late at night reporting an alleged, sexual abuse, how are you intervening at the earliest stage, making the right interventions?
Okay. So as a counsellor receiving a call, you have to identify the risks. And obviously, if it's a child sexual abuse, you know that it's a high-risk case. Having identified the risk, we have a list of numbers. Because it's a social welfare helpline, there are on-call officers. So we will call them immediately, which is nearest to the location of the child. And so that's how they respond. We will call the nearest police post or police station that can respond to this child and escort the child to safety. And thereafter, the needful to help the child follows.
Okay, we'll go in for a short break. But just before that, the Child Helpline is free, private, and can be accessed 24/7.
Yes.
And the number is 1325. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. Yes, the focus of our discussion today is child sexual abuse, and we're speaking to the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, Jennifer Poole, and the Senior Counselor as well, Monisha Singh. Okay, let's just look at some of your statistics. In your 2016 report, 1,440 of your callers were females. How many were children under the age of 17?
I think that The majority of our callers on the Child Helpline are actually adults, and they're calling to report a range of issues. So some are reporting child abuse, they're witnessing they're reporting a child abuse or a child at risk. Other times they're ringing because they're going through some type of family crisis or domestic violence, and they need information and support and to know their options and their rights. We have a high number of our calls are actually around domestic violence, because that in fact impacts children as well, and it's all about supporting the whole family in that context. We do get child callers. They call in on a range of issues that I'll let Monisha explain why the children call.
Children can call us regarding things like the new bus fare scheme. If they have any questions on the bus fare scheme, they call us regarding their homework sometimes. And also very important cases relating to children are the cyberbullying, if they are facing cyberbullying, or if a friend of theirs is actually going through something of that nature. So they call, ask us for help, or if they have concerns relating to these issues. Even relationship issues amongst peers is something that they call us on.
Monisha, could you just give us, clarification here? Is unwanted touching, if a child has, their clothes on, is this defined as rape or indecent assault? And
It would be defined under the law as indecent assault, because rape is specific on penetration.
okay. The changing nature of child sexual abuse, we're looking at this in terms of technology, sexting, and the sharing of explicit pictures. Can this also be reported on the Child Helpline?
Yes, and we feel it must be reported on. Nothing on the internet is safe, and with the current generation and the advancement in technology, children become vulnerable, and if there is experiences of sharing explicit images and messages, basically sexting, it is important that it be reported and we assist the children in it to better make them better aware, and they make informed choices.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the psychological impact of child sexual abuse.
Okay. Child sexual abuse has a wide range of psychological impacts on the child. Now, obviously, as mentioned earlier, an adolescent's responses and psychological impacts will be a slight bit different to that of a younger child. But generally speaking, there would be trauma, right? There would definitely be trauma. There'll be, a child could get into depression, right? But these major things, these post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma, are then indicated through their behavior of acting out, things like lost concentration. Children may have wet dreams, all right, which is, a lot of people aren't able to explain why they're behaving this way. Their behavior and conduct to others of their age, and also towards adults, drawing themselves back, and concentration in class, things like that. So these are indicators to the bigger things, which is depression, trauma, and stress.
Mm-hmm. What's the long-term impact?
Long-term impact basically is with children, all right, because we work with children and through counseling, we try to help them to basically lessen the impacts of trauma. But definitely, if a child isn't counseled and there's no if counseling isn't continued, the trauma is going to stay on, and it's going to impact them in their relationships later. It could impact them in their productivity, their work, their responses. There could also be negative responses. If they are sexually abused at an early age, there is also research and evidence that says that they have ended up being perpetrators themselves and offenders.
Mm-hmm. Monisha, just something I needed to touch on with you as a senior counsel. So you have the medical specialists dealing with the physical impacts of child abuse. How about the magnitude and the consequences of psychological impacts, the trauma? Do we have suitably qualified counselors or child psychologists in Fiji to help, to handle this?
Okay. there are a few organizations like ourselves who provide the psychosocial support. We work with our children, generally clients, in reducing the trauma and helping them better their lives. But and we have, our counselors are qualified with the Australian diplomas in counseling. We have bachelor's degrees in psychology. And aside that, for the organization that we work for, MSP specifically, has been operational for the past 8 years. And therefore, when we are taken on board, we are not just taken on our merit, but also provided thorough ongoing training. And now those trainings are on topics like gender-based violence, how to respond to sexual violence. So there is, good amount of training provided to the counselor before they even get on to help a client. So yes, we are qualified. However, I must let you know that Fiji, unfortunately, does not have clinical psychologists or specific child psychologists on board.
On Speak Your Mind, we're talking this morning to the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, Jennifer Poole, and also Monisha Singh, the Senior Counsellor. Stay with us. This is Speak Your Mind, and of course, joining us on the show, our in-studio guests, Jennifer Poole, the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, and also the Senior Counsellor of Medical Services Pacific, Monisha Singh. Monisha, just a question for you. What should parents do if sexual abuse is suspected?
Okay. It's a great thing if a parent or parents generally identify that their child has been sexually abused, right? And it is a must that they report, all right? Parents must, listen when their child is telling them that they are experiencing some sort of pain in the abdominal area, or if, they're showing indicators of drawing away from a certain relative or a certain member of the house. So those indicators, if identified by parents, they must speak to their child and safeguard their child. They must report it. But most importantly, it is important that while identifying if their child has been abused, they must also talk to their children about touches, the types of touches. Now, there are good touches and there are bad touches. Good touches could be a handshake, one that the child is comfortable with and in no way the child's rights are violated. A bad touch could be something where child's private parts are fondled with, or so it's important for parents to be able to speak to their child and inform them that these are the good and bad touches. They should also put in some time into teaching their children the correct names of their body parts. So say a child gets abused, it is easier for them to go to their parent and tell them that this is what has happened and this is what I have, this is how somebody has touched me. And they are able to identify it as a bad touch.
So, the conversation, you can actually have it without scaring the children. The focus, it should be framed around more the safety than abuse.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Let's look at, some statistics that you shared. 943 were Fijians of Indian descent. Then 1,117 were Itoke. This is from your annual report, 2016 annual report. And 121 were of, other ethnic background. Well, majority of these cases, the majority of them, were they sexual abuse or violence?
The statistics in our annual reports generally reflect all our services. So people might have come in for reproductive health, maternal child health. They could have come in for cervical screening or treatment for cervical cancer and other medical or general medical reasons. So they may have come in for counselling or for counselling on legal aid. So that number reflects the number of clients that were directly assisted during that reporting period. The number of sexual assault clients we've had to date is over 600. So we started our sexual assault program in terms of providing support through a partnership with the Fiji Police Force in 2012, and we're seeing about 20 clients a month coming through that program.
Okay. Another, a very important statistic that was also revealed was that a significant number were males, 741. Yeah? What does this tell us?
So the male clients, if we're looking at the child helpline, the male clients call in on such a wide range of issues, and they're actually categorised often as other, and they can call in on child maintenance or some really extreme cases they've called in on. Shelter needs, housing, they want furniture, things like that. So males will access the line for a wide range of information and services. In terms of our wider services, men are really interested in hearing about family planning, in understanding birth spacing, in understanding child protection, and when we do outreach in the community, men are engaged in that process so that they can also contribute to improve family health. So that's why you can see high numbers of men, because they're accessing the awareness sessions and often accompanying or accessing the clinic services and the after the cyclone. So you're quoting the 2016 report.
That's right. Yeah.
We had a large number of men using the counselling services. They were, significantly traumatised because of losing their homes and crops and being responsible to respond to that and safeguard their families, and they were under extreme pressure. So we had a lot of male counselling clients calling in and visiting us and accessing our services in 2016.
Now, to address the prevalence of child sexual abuse in our country, were there reports too of female perpetrators?
Yes, although the number has been less for female perpetrators.
It's quite marginal. Most of the perpetrators of sexual assault are males, and most of the survivors are females. Although we do have sexual assault against young men and male children. And we have had a couple of cases where a woman's been complicit in knowing that the husband was engaging in inappropriate behaviour with a child and turning a blind eye and not responding to that.
Jennifer, does your organisation have the capacity to handle the amount of sexual abuse cases that are referred to you by the Department of Public Prosecutions?
So our cases are referred by the Fiji Police Force, or they're walk-in clients that come from our awareness and outreach in the community, or just knowledge that the clinic is open in Labasa and Suva. And at the moment we've got a gynecologist in both clinics on full-time and 2 or 3 nurses. So yes, we have the capacity right now to handle Central, Southern and Northern Division. We have a gap in the Western Division at the moment. We're looking for funding and resources to be able to set up a clinic also in Nandi, particularly to respond for cases of sexual assault.
We'll go for a short break now, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with our medical services specific team. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. We're speaking to Jennifer Poole, the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific. Jennifer, just a question for you. Are there new changes being made to, laws or policies relating to child abuse and neglect?
The child protection strategy for Fiji is still in draft form, but it's had wide consultation and it's progressing through the right levels. And hopefully it'll be endorsed in the near future. What was very exciting was the interagency guidelines on child abuse and neglect, which were endorsed in 2015 and signed by all ministries or ministers, and that they give very clear guidelines on how to respond and who's responding and pathways. So, for example, if you see, so there's mandatory reporters such as nurses, teachers,
The legal.
medical staff, legal officers. So, for example, in school, if a teacher suspects a case of child abuse, they must report under the law, under the new law, and that's really important. I think there's some really strong child protection systems in place. The Ministry of Women have instituted the Child Helpline, which is a 24-hour service which reports directly to them and responds immediately. And we've been able to, assist children at risk almost immediately. The lines are answered by the child welfare officers at any time of day or night, and they do their best to respond. So I think there's some good child protection systems in place in Fiji right now, and they're starting to be strengthened with education on child protection protocols and policies and how to report. So I think that's a very good thing for Fiji.
I just needed to ask, with your counselors handling so much trauma and abuse, who looks after their well-being and mental health?
Okay, we've recently just worked on and modified our supervision methods. Yes, you're right when you say, we're handling so much, we need to have a go-to person too. And so what we have is continuous and proper debriefs. Because we are on a shift rotation basis, there's a debrief whenever there's a change of counsellor. There are debriefs with the supervisor, and aside this, we have creative means of sort of engaging ourselves using role plays and using case studies to put ourselves on the same page when it comes to ethical standards, and also to maintain and safeguard ourselves and safeguard our health. So that, and we also try and have like I mentioned earlier, there are only a few clinical psychologists in Fiji, and so as and when required on an ad hoc basis, should one of us require assistance of an independent external supervision, the organization provides that.
What are some of the challenges, faced by the organization when providing outreach in the community?
At the moment, we don't have any challenges in terms of, scheduling those. In fact, we're really overbooked. We actually need another team. We've got teams out split into 3 and out across a number of islands at the moment. The challenges are more finding the funding to keep those types of services going. They're quite valuable. The teams work in partnership with the Ministry of Health staff, and also they're supporting the REACH program with the Ministry of Women and UNDP. So they're out in the field. The only challenges we face is sometimes weather challenges, transport in terms of the islands. Just the standard challenges. When we get to the field, we've already done a lot of work beforehand with the correct stakeholders to make sure that the community's ready to receive the education. And we've been really pleased and lucky, I think, in Fiji that people are quite welcoming of new information, and we're able to cover sensitive topics without any issues. So that's great.
Jennifer, we had this discussion earlier. I was just sharing the amount of calls that you had received when the Child Helpline was launched in 2015 was 679. And you just mentioned earlier you've received 40,000 calls to date. I just wanted to ask, a lot of people are coming forward, maybe more than they did 15 years ago in the context of Fiji. 15 years ago, maybe it was an underreported crime. So with people breaking their silence, is it safe to say the problem is declining, or is this still a poor analysis of our reality?
I think that we could sit down and look at the statistics that are captured by the Ministry of Women and the Fiji Police Force and really have a good look at are these cases declining. The statistics are showing a slight decrease, but what we're seeing in the courts is increased numbers coming through the court system, and that's because some of the cases have taken some time to get through the courts, and there was a bit of a backlog, and now they're all going through rather much more quickly. So you're seeing a lot more cases coming through the court system, and so it looks like there's more assaults and there's more child abuse, but it's just the fact that some of these cases are from 2 years or 3 years ago, and they're all coming through now with the cases for this year. So it looks like there's a massive increase, but in fact it's just I think the systems are a bit more effective and they're functioning more smoothly, and you're seeing cases coming through and being actioned well and getting justified sentencing and getting good coverage in the media as well. So people are more aware that there's accountability for these types of crimes.
Still in court, Jennifer, do you think a child should relive such a traumatic experience by taking the stand in court with the perpetrator in the same room? If yes, then why is that? If no, is MSP in a position to ensure this doesn't happen?
We're not in a position to intervene in court processes. Obviously, that there's a child family court, there's a child court. They are supposed to be separated. They're not, children are not really meant to be facing the perpetrator in these situations, and I believe that there's mechanisms in place to safeguard the child as they go through the court system. But that's a question that needs to be posed to the Department of Public Prosecutions and the Justice.
I certainly hope to bring him on the show as well. We're going in for a short break now, and when we come back, we're speaking to Jennifer Poole, the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, and also Manisha Singh, the Senior Counsellor. Welcome to Speak Your Mind, and of course our in-studio guest today is Jennifer Poole, the Executive Director of Medical Services Pacific, and Manisha Singh, the Senior Counsellor of MSP. Jennifer, your core work focus is more on child survivors, but let's look at their protection from abusers. We're now waiting for the Registration of Sex Offenders Bill 2018 to be passed in Parliament. Do you welcome or support it, or should certain provisions be improved? If yes, could you highlight which ones?
I think that that's definitely a helpful process. I think the public have a right to be safe. They have a right to know that there's a dangerous or a risk or a dangerous offender in their midst. So in this case, it's very important. There was a groundbreaking law brought in California called Megan's Law, which was put in place after a violent offender, a sex offender was placed in the community, and the community weren't advised, and he raped and killed the young girl Megan. And so this law was enacted in California, which gives the public the right to know if there's a dangerous offender in their community. So in the case where there are serious risk, I think that's an important thing.
How is, MSP raising the quality of work, that you're doing to ensure that Fijian children's rights are adequately protected and, working on strengthening the protection of children at risk?
We do a range of activities working in communities and schools. So we provide the Girl Empowered program of information, which covers all ranges of information that teenagers need around family life and reproductive health and their rights and understanding consent. And we also do child protection training with stakeholders and with those partners that have requested that we assist them to provide child protection policies and protocols within their organisations. And we're looking forward to continuing to do that.
And most importantly, the Medical Services Pacific administers the social welfare's helpline, that National Child Helpline 1325, and we've already talked about how we've received over 40,000 calls till date. Now, we encourage callers to call us, children particularly. We'd like to hear from children if they are going through any of these troubles, being abused, or if they know of any child or any relative of theirs is being abused or neglected. Also, like I said, the Child Helpline is operated by counselors. We are qualified counselors to listen to you, even if children want to talk about how their day went. Youngsters, we've got calls from children from the age of 3 to 5, so they can call us and speak to us about how their day went, and that gives us room to actually identify if they have been in any form of risk, if there are any child protection concerns. So we really encourage children to call us, adults to also call us who are concerned about a particular child abuse matter or who are just generally seeking information on child protection and parenting.
Jennifer, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you very much, Gwen, for having us and allowing us to share some of the services that we have. Our clinics are free to women, youth and children. They're open 5 days a week, and the Suva Clinic's open on Saturdays as well. And it's a walk-in clinic, but you can also book, and you can also contact the Child Helpline on 1325 for other information.
Thank you as well, ladies, for your time. And that's Speak Your Mind for yet another Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening on Gold FM and also watching on FBC TV.